Hello, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. My name is Ann Kaplan, and I am a parent coach and birth worker and a work at home mom, just like you. My work centers with parents around behavior and mindset, and I'm all about giving agency and responsibility to kids of all ages and about giving freedom to parents. And no one needs these things more than the work at home mom. And these days, more and more of us are becoming work at home moms, which makes the skills I teach about organization, discipline, and attitudes in the home even more crucial. I geared today's talk specifically to support parents around being at home during the day, with kids during the day, working during the day. So if you're struggling with things like working and parenting simultaneously and feeling like you're doing a terrible job at both of them sometimes, struggling with things like your kids' behavior, power struggles, misbehavior, fighting, not being able to get any time to play or getting them to play independently so that you can have any time to work by yourself, teaching them to not interrupt you while you're on the phone or having a meeting, all of those things, in addition to all of the emotions that come along with the burden that we carry every day on our shoulders as work at home moms. Today's talk should be really helpful for you, and I hope that it's going to give you the confidence and belief that you have what it takes to make raising your kids and your business simultaneously doable. I promise that it is. So, as I said before, I am a birth worker and parent coach, which means that I work with moms at every stage of motherhood, from the second they get a bun in the oven until the minute they become empty nesters. I have something to support you if you're a mom. And I want to make sure that you guys know that just because I'm a parent coach does not mean I'm super mom at all. You can see my amazing 4 kids here. They look amazing and they are amazing, but it's not always picture perfect, and it definitely didn't start out picture perfect. When I first became a mom, I had no idea about parenting. I had no parenting skills, and I really was just winging it, trying whatever I could think of to get my parenting under control and handle my kids, yelling, lecturing, punishing, bribing, threatening, everything that you could think of. And unfortunately, none of it was working. It was really obvious that I didn't know what I was doing, and it was really ineffective. Their behavior was getting worse, and I felt terrible. I felt super guilty that I was losing my temper with my kids. I felt ashamed that I didn't know what I was doing. And mostly, I just felt like I was letting my family down. So I got training. I got training in parenting and in mindset, and I totally changed the emotions and behavior in my family. And that's what I do for other moms now, because I want you guys to know that it does not need to take this massive amount of internal work like I had to do to get your family on track and behavior in your home working again. It can be so much faster and easier when you have a coach working with you. And that's what I do. So how do I do that? I want you to look at this image, which is what I call my success system with my clients, and really notice these 3 areas: management, mindset, and momming. So this is the approach that I use, and those 3 areas are what I bring to bear in every single thing that I do, whether it's my one-on-one work with my clients, answering a question in my Facebook group, a webinar, teaching a class, anything. These 3 areas are so important. So when I started my parenting practice out, I really was just teaching that momming piece. I'm a Love and Logic independent facilitator, and I was teaching amazing discipline skills that I believed in and I knew they worked and all that stuff. But I learned really, really quickly that my clients just could not have success when they were feeling overwhelmed and frazzled, their houses were chaotic, they were crushed under a mountain of mom guilt and feeling miserable and like they were failing their families. I realized that I needed to support them in these other areas as well. So what are those other areas? When I talk about management, what I'm talking about is everything that's the nuts and bolts and structure of how you run your house. Everything from a routine to the chores in your house, to the rules in your house, delegation in your house, the people that you have coming in and helping you with your kids. If you have that, all of those things, the nuts and bolts and really the skeleton on which the body of your family hangs, that's management. Mindset is a buzzword, which I kind of hate and kind of love because it is crucial, and I'm glad that it's becoming something that's so kind of on the tip of our tongues all the time. But when I talk about mindset with my clients, what I'm really talking about is reframing our ideas about what it is to be a mom in the first place. What is our job description really? And also dealing with a lot of that mom guilt stuff that just seems to be so insidious and omnipresent in the world of mothering. So I'm going to be talking about all three of those areas today. Obviously, it would be impossible for me to impart to you my entire 6-month coaching program with all of the tips and tricks that are in all three of these areas. But what I'm going to be doing today is just giving you really helpful tips in each of these areas that you can implement today that will hopefully make work at home momming a lot easier for you. So let's jump in with management first. What I want to talk about today when it comes to management is time management. I think the biggest question I get from work at home moms all the time is, how do I get work done with my kids around all of the time? And I really think it's super important to create a realistic schedule for your family and stick to it. I think right now a huge problem that we're facing as work at home moms is that we're really trying to make an outdated system fit a new reality. You know, our ideas about what a good mother is, or what even a working mother is, come from a time when moms either did nothing but mom, or they worked in a totally different landscape than we do today. The world is different now. It's just different. And even the world of the working mother is changing moment by moment, and especially the work at home mother. Even when we think about a working parent, we have these ideas about what that looks like, and almost never do those ideas involve being in the middle of a pile of laundry with dirty dishes all around you and kids around your feet. We have an idea of like a mom who goes to work and then she comes home and she moms, and those things are really compartmentalized. But that's just not the way the world works. So the first thing I want to do when I talk about management with you and time management is to really give you permission to make your schedule for your family in a way that's realistic and fits your reality, instead of feeling like a failure because you're living or your life looks like a way that it's not supposed to be. I really want you to create the logistics of your life to fit the realities of your life. So let's dig in with that. And obviously it would be very pointless for me to sit here and say this is the exact schedule you need, because everybody has different aged kids, everybody has different work requirements, everybody does different kinds of work, all of those things. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty with that stuff. I would love to do that with you guys, but that's something that I do one-on-one in my discovery calls and when I'm working with clients one-on-one. So I really encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity to set up a discovery call, because then we really can get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on with your specific family when it comes to time management. But right now what I want to do is give you some tips that are applicable, and I refuse to back off from this rule. It is very true, and if you think it's not, it's probably you thinking it's not is probably one of the biggest things holding you back right now. These truths are obvious and true and hold true for every work at home mom, no matter what your situation. The first is no multitasking. If you have already followed me before, if you're already in my Facebook group, if you're already getting my weekly emails, you have probably already heard me say this a million times. Multitasking is the devil. Multitasking is terrible. There's tons of literature out there that tells us that multitasking isn't good because you really can't multitask. The brain isn't capable of doing more than one thing at a time. And so what's happening when we're multitasking is we're switching back and forth between two things really fast. And we're just really basically doing both of them poorly because we're constantly interrupting the process of one to check on the process of the other. And the other thing that happens when you're multitasking is those two things, or three or four, I mean, let's be real, right? We're work at home moms. We might be responding to emails, cooking dinner, talking to a kid, and answering a phone call at the same time. But when we do those things, those four things, let's say, that you're doing are actually taking you longer than if you had sat down and done one at a time. So you do those things less well, and you take longer to do them. But the real reason why multitasking is the devil, in my opinion, and the reason why I work so hard to prove to my clients that they don't need to multitask, is because when we're multitasking, whatever we're doing in that moment, we have this sensation that, like, right on the other side of us, right outside of our peripheral vision, there's something really urgent that demands our attention. Because there is. When you multitask, you set up two or more tasks tasks to demand your attention at the same time. And then that feeling of overwhelm that I hear all the time especially with my work at home clients, is really largely from the multitasking that they're doing. If you can just commit to a hard and fast rule that you never do more than one thing at a time. When you're working, you're not momming. And when you're momming, you are not working. And even getting more specific in those things. The more that you commit to that rule, instead of thinking, well, that's not possible, so I'm just going to throw that rule out the window and my life's just going to be a jumble of me trying to do everything at once. If you commit to not multitasking, I promise you that you're going to see a major game change just with that one commitment. So my first thing that I want you to do before you sit down and write this schedule is, one, open your mind up to being creative. Be okay with the fact that it's not going to look like what working at home used to look like, or what working parent used to look like, or whatever. And then commit to no multitasking. And then look at your calendar, look at your schedule, look at what your kids need, look at what you need, look at what's non-negotiable, look at what is flexible. And I want you to think outside of the box. The only rule in creating your schedule is no multitasking. So there are so many different kinds of ways that this looks for so many different kinds of parents. Some of us are co-parenting and our co-parent lives in the same house as us. Maybe we're married, maybe we have a partner, whatever. Some of us are co-parenting, but we're separated. And so our kids spend some of their time at their other co-parent's house and some of their time with us. Some of us are single parents with no co-parent at all. But all three of those scenarios, and whatever other myriad of scenarios are out there in this world, all of them still give you the capacity to work when you're not parenting. I'm going to give you an example that is super generic and it's not even that creative, but I'm going to show you that you can actually have 4 hours a day of uninterrupted time working, not 4 consecutive hours. So I want you to really think creatively about things. Like, let's say you have 8 hours of work you need to get done in a day. Okay, that's fine, but it's not going to be 8 consecutive hours. Maybe you don't need to work from 9 to 5. Maybe you can be open to working outside of the traditional 9 to 5 paradigm. Maybe you can be working outside of the traditional consecutive blocks of time paradigm. All of those things are possible when you open your eyes and open your mind up to those possibilities and recognize that all of them are good and valid. It becomes a lot easier to get creative. So some of the ways that I work with my clients to create time for themselves where they can work without parenting at the same time are, and this isn't even that creative, maybe you work for an hour before your kids wake up in the morning. Then maybe your kids get an hour of quiet time for the day. Then maybe there's an hour of screen time for the day. And then maybe you work for an hour after they go to bed for the day. That's 4 hours right there, and I'm not even trying to be creative or tricky because, once again, need to know your specific situation to be able to get real creative with that stuff. Like if you have a co-parent, the world is your oyster because you can really tag team and stuff like that. What I really want to walk away from this management piece giving you isn't this is the schedule you need, but the things that hold people back in creating a schedule are giving themselves permission to have a schedule, not multitasking, being creative and coming up with something that doesn't look traditional. And the last piece, and this is really, really crucial, we are the ones who have to enforce our schedule. And I'm going to talk about in a second enforcing that schedule with our kids, but first and foremost, we need to enforce that schedule with ourselves. We are the ones who pick up our phone while we're hanging out with our kids and just check if we have any email. We're the ones who decide to, listen to a training while we're making dinner. We're the ones who offer a spot to a potential client that's outside of our traditional working hours because oftentimes we feel so unworthy that we don't have any boundaries for ourselves in the first place. So a lot of time management is really much more about valuing ourselves and enforcing and setting boundaries, which is great because that's the next thing I want to talk about. Okay, obviously you're going to create this amazing schedule. It's going to be awesome. And I don't care how old your kids are, they ain't going to follow the schedule unless you enforce it. So let's talk about the actual parenting aspect of the work at home parent because it's huge. So I want to spend this momming piece talking about enforcing boundaries, and I really want to spend a tiny second talking about why the kind of parenting that we're probably doing right now isn't working. what's fundamental to think about is that all humans, not just kids, all crave energy, intensity, emotion, and intention from the people around them. So when we get angry with our kids and we yell at them or we just punish them, but in a harsh way, or just very obviously showing that we're disappointed in them, or even when we very calmly and lovingly get down at their level and give them a little bit of a talking to or a lecture about, now this is why what you did was wrong, and next time I need you to do this or whatever. All of those parenting approaches are giving our kids that energy, intensity, emotion, and attention. So I really want to flip the switch with that one and talk a little bit about a different type of parenting right now that is going to be so much more effective. And it definitely requires you to stick to those boundaries like we were talking about and enforce those boundaries. But if you do it, you very quickly will be building into your day these amazing moments where you don't actually need to enforce rules anymore because your kids already know them and they follow them and they trust you and they believe you and they know that you say what you mean and you mean what you say and all that stuff. So let's talk about what most of us are doing right now. This is what I call the cycle of frustrated parenting. And if you work with me, you'll see a lot of the time that what we're talking about is something that's kind of a modified paradigm, sort of like Brooke Castillo's self-coaching model. If you don't know who she is, she's an amazing life coach, and I encourage you to get to know her and follow her, listen to her podcast or whatever. But what we're talking about here is the concept that your circumstances lead you to have feelings and thoughts and emotions, and that those are what instigate or trigger the actions that we take. And everybody already knows that the actions you take are what give you the results that you have. And this is exactly what's happening in this cycle of frustrated parenting. So the circumstance that we find ourselves in, most of us as moms, are a situation where we are doing everything for everyone. We're not managing our family in that management category. We're the grunt workers for our family. We're doing everything. We're doing it all at the same time. That's that multitasking piece. And we are repeating ourselves all day long to a room full of people who are ignoring us. And whether your kid is 2 or 12 or 20, you can easily find yourself in this situation. And when we're in this situation, the emotions that come up for us are often exhaustion, overwhelm, and anger, resentment, frustration. It's just so awful. And when you feel that way, you're basically spending all of your time just, a hair's width away from losing it all the time. So it doesn't take much for us to react to our children's misbehavior or bad decisions in a super reactive and ineffective way, whether that's yelling or giving in to them or punishing them, but in a really punitive way, or giving them a lecture, all that stuff that we talked about before. It's not effective, and it's really coming from a super reactive and triggered place within us. And the result that we get is, in the best case scenario, no change in our kids' behavior. But to be honest, usually what happens is that their behavior worsens. And the reason why is just like what I talked about a minute ago. When you're rewarding accidentally, unwittingly, your child's misbehavior with that energy and intention, you're accidentally reinforcing their bad behavior and incentivizing them to do it again. Excuse me. Oh no, I sneezed in a video. I'm not stopping now because I've made it this far. So the other thing that comes from this kind of parenting is that our kids don't really care. They don't have any skin in the game or investment in making better choices next time. And that's what I want to focus on right now when I talk about parenting techniques that are going to help you break this cycle. So obviously when I'm normally working with my clients, we're talking about every piece of this cycle. But today, right now, what I want to talk about is this piece, that don't care piece. This means that our kids don't care about what we want them to do. It matters so much less to them than it does to us if they do the things that they're supposed to do or that we've asked them to do or we want them to do. We care so much more than they do, and that is the biggest problem. So the way that I encourage my clients to respond to their children's behavior, and what we're going to talk about here in a second, is basically responding to our kids and raising our kids in a way that creates their own desire and investment in their behavior. It raises their own internal motivation above our motivation. So think about how you were raised as a kid. And it's not true for all of us, but I would say for a vast majority of our generation, if you think back to why you made good choices when you were a kid, why you did the right thing, why you did the thing that your parents wanted you to do, or why you didn't break the rules, most of the time it was either because we were trying to avoid getting in trouble, or we were trying to garner praise and approval from our parents. So basically we were either afraid of our parents or we were trying to get a gold star from our parents. But either way, both of those reasons are not internal motivation. They're external motivation. We're doing those things because of what other people think. And I want you to think now as an adult, most of us as moms are doing a lot of the things we're doing as moms, not because it's our own internal motivation, but because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do. It's what other people expect of us. It's what we should be doing. And that didn't come from nowhere. So raising our kids in this way that actually raises their internal motivation gets amazing results right now. It changes their behavior right now, but also it's amazing because it's really laying a foundation for adults who are going to grow up to really follow their own compass in so much more of a strong way than a lot of us can do right now. So how do we do that? This whole internal motivation thing. The simple answer and the parent jargony answer is natural consequences. Natural consequences help kids care about what they're doing. The kids wind up having an investment in their situation, which means they want to do the things that we ask because it matters to them, not because it matters to us. It is a really great way of setting boundaries and actually being quite strict and holding our kids to high standards without actually putting any shame or disappointment or anger on them. And it's just like I said, it improves their behavior now and it teaches these life lessons that will be with our kids for their entire lives, and it's so amazing that way. So before I go and dig into natural consequences, I want to just take a second and ask you, what do you think your job is as a mom? I ask this question all of the time because when we're confused about what our job is, it becomes really hard to step back and let natural consequences teach. So I think that my clients wind up having a lot more success implementing these new parenting skills when they are also able to shift their mindset about what the point of parenting even is. And that when they do that, they're able to feel good and committed to this new approach. So you heard me say before that one of the mindset pieces is really changing the paradigm about what our job description is as moms. Here's where that becomes so important. So oftentimes we think our job as moms is getting our kids to do things, getting them to eat nutritious food, getting them to be good people, getting them to be good listeners, all of those things, getting a specific outcome for our children. And I want to tell you right now that that is not your job, and it never was. And if it were your job, it would be possible. But it's very true that the only person in this world that you have the right or ability to control is yourself. So I don't believe that nature or God or whatever you would want to say would have ever designed a situation where our mandate as moms is actually outside of our ability. That just doesn't make sense to me. So I want to ask you again, what is your job as a mom? And that's for you to answer for yourself. But I'll tell you what the job description that I use for myself and my clients is, and it seems to be really helpful. I think that my job as a mother is to create a safe environment or provide a space inside of which my kids get to make their own decisions and mistakes and bumbling mess ups and all of that stuff and live with the results of those decisions. And the walls of that space are the boundaries and consequences that we put in place. And so when you're able to think about it that way, it becomes so much easier to step back and let our kids make their own mistakes and experience those natural consequences. So I want to kind of tell you guys the 3 keys that I use in all of the discipline that I teach with my clients. Whatever skill we're talking about, these 3 pieces come into play. You already have seen the 3rd one on here because I just said it. The only person you have the right or ability to control is yourself. Also really important are the idea that all humans, not just kids, we all in this life want to feel like we're in control and we're in the driver's seat. We want choice. Nobody likes being bossed around. And if you have a 2-year-old, I don't need to tell you that because you're probably getting schooled in that every single day. And the other piece of that puzzle is the most profound and lasting kind of learning that anybody can have is experiential learning. So when we're lecturing, when we're punishing, when we're yelling, when we're reminding, we're really prolonging or delaying the chance for our kids to have that experiential learning. So a great way to think about that is, one time of your kid going to school with their shoes in a backpack instead of on their feet because they didn't get their shoes on in time will teach your kid so much more than a lifetime of reminding your kid, put on your shoes, where are your shoes, did you put your shoes on yet, ever could. Just let the kids make mistakes and experience what happens when they make those mistakes. Even in a work at home situation where their mistake might be that they interrupt you on a phone call. Their mistake might be that they walk in here while I'm talking to you guys and making a video and I have to start all over again. That's a big mistake and it will definitely have a consequence, but so much more beneficial to me and my child for them to have actually made that mistake and experiencing that consequence, because it's beneficial to me because when they experience that consequence, it lowers the odds that they'll ever do that again. And it's so much more beneficial for them because they get to learn that lesson without us being a part of that equation. They learn it for themselves. So that's the approach when I'm talking about discipline. And some of the examples I wanted to illustrate for you guys. Normally when I'm teaching this class, I have like a Q&A right now. But instead, I thought of a couple great examples that I think are really applicable to the work-at-home mom. One of them is kids coming out of quiet time, because once you establish quiet time, all of a sudden you have built an hour of not momming into your day so that you can get work done, whether it's one-on-one with somebody or having a meeting or something, or just silence so that you can write a blog post or create some content. So that's a huge example, is kids not following the rules around quiet time. And the other example that I want to throw out there is kids interrupting you when you're on a phone call or having a meeting or something like that. And the meeting one is the best because so many of us get interrupted. It happens all the time. Kids come and interrupt, and what do? Especially if we're on the phone and no one can see us, we kind of have the phone like this and we're like, yeah, okay, later, go away, don't interrupt me while I'm on the phone. And we're trying to get them to go away and leave us alone, but we're not actually giving them a consequence or disciplining them about it. We're just basically really just reminding them that they're not supposed to interrupt us and repeating ourselves and stuff like that. Next time that happens, I want you to put the phone down and just say, I need a minute, give me 1 second. Put the person on mute, put the phone down. Same thing if you're in a Zoom meeting or whatever it is. And then turn to your child and say, well, that was a bad decision. We don't interrupt mommy when she's working. It looks like you need to stay in your room until I'm done with my call. We'll try it again next time. Love you so much, blah, blah, blah. Giving that consequence right then and there can completely transform what's going on with you in your workspace, because doing that once or twice builds this foundation where you ain't gonna get interrupted very often anymore, instead of this constant interruption and frustration and this power struggle that you're in with your kids. So I want you to kind of take that as an example, and I'm going to give you a link in a little minute that you can actually get a free guide that's going to give you even more examples. But I want to stay on track, so let's move on to mindset. The mindset piece that I want to talk about right now is the mindset piece that's present for all of us, whether we're work-at-home moms, whether we're in a weird situation or a normal situation, whatever. It would be so awesome for me to be able to say to you guys, after introducing this idea of natural consequences, here's a list of 10 natural consequences. Now your life's going to be perfect. But obviously it doesn't work that way. If you've ever read a parenting book and your life still isn't perfect, you already know it doesn't work that way. And the reasons why are, first of all, your family is unique. The approach that you read in a book isn't probably going to be a perfect fit for your family. One size fits all just doesn't work. And the other reason why is consequences only work when they're delivered with love and compassion. So when I help my clients, we start out with a general approach of parenting skills and discipline strategies. But as I get to know you and I understand your situation and your exact specific problems and your exact specific emotional blocks, we kind of develop your own list of natural consequences that fit your kid, that are specific to their behavior, and also there's something that we've done work around, the two of us, so that it's something you feel good about using, which means you will use it, which means it will work. So when I used to get to this part of my talk, I would give all these examples of natural consequences, but that's a total waste because, once again, this one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work. Plus, and here's the link I was going to tell you guys about, just get my free guide to getting kids to listen the first time you ask, and it walks you through those 3 principles and exactly how to apply them in the situation of stopping repeating yourself. It is so helpful. So go ahead and get that right there. But what I want to talk about right now is what makes something a consequence versus a punishment. And the answer is it's all in the delivery. So the outcome could be the same. For example, that little kid who's interrupting you while you're on the phone, the outcome could be that that child ends up in their room, but what makes it a consequence is the way that I calmly and lovingly spoke and enforced that boundary versus being like, you interrupted me when I'm on the phone. You know that's against the rule. I'm really upset with you. Now you need to go to your room. I don't want to talk to you right now. Now it's a punishment. It's not a consequence anymore. So I want you to remember that it's consequences delivered with love, consequences plus love. And that's what keeps the child's focus on themselves and keeps them from getting defensiveness or blaming us. It helps them think and reflect so they're actually learning something. It's giving them that experience versus that emotion of shame or anger. So keeping calm when we give consequences gives this message to our kids that it doesn't matter how they behave. Our love is unchangeable. It takes away the chance for them to put their attention on us and blah, blah, blah. But staying calm is so hard. And I know it's hard. It's easy for me to sit here in a video and tell you to stay calm. You probably already knew that. But it's really hard to stay calm, and let's talk about why. There's 2 things that are necessary, whether you're a work-at-home mom or not, to stay calm. One of them is addressing our general needs. Things like alone time, relationships, hobbies, friends. Those are things that, in my opinion, are universal, and they're not luxuries. They're necessities. And then there's a second piece about staying calm. We all have unique, deeper issues, and that's where what I call your brain tornado comes in. The brain tornado is basically everything that you're bringing to the table as a mom, probably before you ever even became a mom. It's all of your own hang-ups and stories, your fears, your beliefs, the things that really get triggered when your kid misbehaves, and they hold you back from being able to really see clearly or execute properly because you're upset. Your brain tornado is all kicked up inside your head. It's swirling around inside your head, and it makes it so that you have zero visibility. And it's really, really triggered when your kid is ignoring you, for example, or when work gets crazy, or life is just topsy-turvy in general. And the other thing that's really important to know about a brain tornado is that it's really hard to identify from the inside. And, adding work-at-home momming into the mix, and that tornado becomes a Category 5 hurricane for a lot of us. Tricky circumstances bring up our old issues, routines and self-care habits are getting messed up, or they're just non-existent. So, the number one benefit of working with a coach is having somebody that's outside that can identify that brain tornado for you. It's so important to be able to identify what that is and also learn how to neutralize it. So, of course, if you decide to set up a discovery call with me, we are going to be talking about all the strategies in the world and tailoring them to you, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to create this amazing schedule for you that's actually doable and realistic. But what's even more profound than that is figuring out and healing whatever is triggering your brain tornado so that you can stay calm and handle things when they get tough. And that's when things become so much easier, both inside and outside of parenting. So I just want to kind of review what we talked about. We talked about in the managing department, creating that realistic schedule with no multitasking, and it's a creative schedule that works with what's true and real for you. from the parenting perspective, implementing natural consequences, that's raising kids' internal motivation. Remember those 3 principles we talked about experiential learning, kids, you can only control yourself, and kids wanting choice and agency. And in the mindset department, what is your brain tornado? Identify it and make sure that you have that outside perspective to be able to help you really know what's going on from an objective place instead of from the inside in the eye of that hurricane. And so that's why the last thing I want to offer you guys before I wrap up today is a discovery call with me. It is a free 45-minute call where I sit and listen to you a lot, and a lot less talking than I've just done right now. I get to know you and your family and your unique challenges and what you want your life to be like as a work-at-home mom. And then I help you identify what's holding you back and give you a roadmap on how to change that. And everybody who does a discovery call with me, whether or not we decide to ever work together after that day, walks away from their call with a lot of more clarity about their situation, a lot more hope that they can actually do something to change it, and just a feeling of energy, like that they want to do it. So I hope that you'll sign up, and the way that you can do that is to just go to my website and follow all the links to a free discovery call. Also, hopefully there'll be a link somewhere really accessible to you for that call even more easily than just going to my website. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope it was a really, really helpful experience. Bye!